So I fired up Claude Code and said, let's start thinking about some experiments we could set up. And it said, oh, by the way, did you know that Arya's already done this? I was like, oh, okay.
That's Justin Johnson, an independent AI researcher and author of the book Builder-Leader, the AI exoskeleton that crosses the gap. The moment that opens today's conversation happened at his home desk when he sat down to build something. That something? His own system had already built it 3 months earlier while he was asleep. I'm Thomas Bin, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 100th episode of Data Science Leaders. Aria. It runs on a small supercomputer on Justin's desk. It researches its own ideas, scores them, writes the code, and critiques itself. It's a loop Justin calls the flywheel. He points it at the problems he cares about, from oncology to reading retina scans in clinics in Nepal. What Justin has been living, most of us have only read about. We began by talking about this powerful creation. Justin, in June, you wrote on your blog about Aria. You explain in this initial blog post, now you have a website for it and such, that you were surprised because Aria started something to do this year while you slept. So give us a little bit more context about Aria and what it does.
Yeah, so it started as like most of the things that I do, it started as like I just want to learn. And there was a lot of excitement around agents and autonomous agents and these AI assistants. So I decided what better way to do it than just build yourself. And then it turned out to be more of not necessarily a research assistant, but almost an organism. She kind of runs her own lab while I sleep now, as you mentioned. And I think she's been running in the background now for over 8 months and has been pointed at a lot of different problems. And the way she operates is that she has kind of this 6 stage, and I call it the flywheel because it just keeps feeding on itself, right? So it takes ideas that it researches, it scores them, it executes some code cheaply to begin with, and you and I both know that like trying to take code from papers is really hard. So this was actually one of the hardest steps. And then it analyzes all of this, it critiques it with a different model, so it doesn't kind of grade its own homework. And then I think most importantly, and was that I had it try to figure out how to self-heal itself, right? So it can now go through, and as it runs into issues, it'll heal itself, and there'll be like no human in the loop. So I set the directions, give it the guardrails, and sit on top of it. And I think why I built her, in addition to like just the learning component of it, is like for my day job, it's a lot reading 20 papers, coming up with the gaps that nobody's tested on something, getting 40 ideas together, and then running these experiments, and all wanting to do all of this in an afternoon and not take the standard 6 to 8 months. So this was I wanted to build a machine that would kind of automate this thinking and the computing, and now the computing starting to become the cheap part. And then so you mentioned like the while I slept part of this, right? So it's like I was talking to a company about federated learning and realized that I didn't know as much as I wanted to about it. So the best way to best way to learn for me is to build something. So I fired up Claude Code and said, let's start thinking about some experiments we could set up. And it said, oh, by the way, did you know that Arya's already done this? And I think that was kind of one of these moments for me. I was like, oh, okay. It was a humbling moment. And I went in and I dug through it, and she had scored it as a 9.2 and shipped it. It was about 600 lines of code that she shipped, and went into like the differential privacy and the per site personalization and all of this stuff that I had kind of wanted to dig into, and I went and found it 3 months later. So that was something that was really good. And I think I wrote it as like I called myself the second mover in my own project.
You discovered that Aria had done it, was ahead of you, actually 3 months ahead of you in terms of realizing some of this work. Now that it's been a few more months, what is it doing now that you were maybe not expecting at all? In not only being ahead of things, but have you had other similar discoveries in what it does now?
Yeah, I think one of the awesome things about it is that I I originally built it to kind of almost keep up with like the AI research, right? How do you tune these models, things like that. And then, I've pointed her at other problems around like competitive intelligence and oncology, and more recently, working with a company in Nepal. Uh, they're helping people in clinics in Nepal, and this company looks at retina scans, and we pointed her towards the retina scans. And I think the interesting thing about the eye is it's like the one place that you can see the blood vessels and the nerves without cutting people open. So it's very non-invasive in how you can look at this. And so, the problem that we pointed Ari at there was is that, it can read a person's health from a single retina photograph. So like diabetic retinopathy, systematic disease that these people might be coming in for, like, you can take a plain camera and flag disease risk with people. And, these are people that are never going to be able to go to full labs anyway, in rural clinics and low resource settings. So, it was pointing Ari at something that was really fulfilling for me to work on because there was a mission behind it. Um, and it was really cool to see that you could build the Aria kernel once and kind of point it at a lot of different problems. And, so right now she's running continuously she got an upgrade. So I had a DGX Spark running on my desk. So a little supercomputer on my desk. She's now upgraded to a full HEP GPU node, so an H100, and has run thousands of sessions and hundreds of different experiments. And we've been able to dig in and look at training our own models off of the data that we have available to us. And I think this is a really cool part of this, right? Is like this mission. How do you roll up technology and put it towards a mission? And I think, taking frontier AI like this and pointing at people that, a lab can't touch, I think that's something really cool. And, the people will never hear her name, and that's fine. I think that's something that's really, really cool.
It is indeed fascinating to see that frontier AI ends up being used in Nepal, where it's almost frontier health. Um, You mentioned a little bit what it means for patients in one of these clinics, but I assume you said it's non-invasive, but it's mostly based on pictures, taking a picture, and Aria does her work, and so it's a massive step forward in terms of the quality of health and diagnosis for these people.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's always kind of made me really proud about it is that Aria is like my side hustle. Like, I wasn't even doing this in my day job. So like I just actually submitted, and it's now an archive, and it's a published paper on Aria that I'm the sole author as an independent researcher.
What's very interesting is you actually wrote in one of your blog posts that you're not the first mover. I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation. You're not the first mover on your own project anymore. You even you Aria is a she. It's not an it. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So how is it to now collaborate? It's very interesting. I think some people think as agents as an extension of themselves. Oh, okay, it's going to help me do my job. You actually created almost like a partner. So how is it to work with Arya being the creator, but now the collaborator?
I think anybody that builds stuff, they really just want it to be used, right? And I'm finding that as I build these things, like people are finding them useful, but then I continue to keep finding them more useful for the things that I'm building. And this is where this flywheel keeps coming in, right? So, but there was a bit of an unease there too, right? Because it's I think this is kind of a stand-in for how we're all kind of feeling about AI right now, right? With this immense power that you're able to go off and do, like, you kind of ask yourself, am I still needed here? Like, if she's doing all of this, what's there left for me to do, type thing. And I think, and I've written a lot about this, but I think the human judgment just doesn't get replaced here, right? AI can generate so many things, um, but the fact is it would have just sat there unused if I hadn't have made that connection between people to people of saying, look, I see your company, I see some value in it, I want to learn more, this is how I learn. And then I made those connections, right? So that's something. And so for me, like, generation is cheap, and knowing which of these generations these generated things matter is the human part of this. The other thing is like I built up this ecosystem around it that could help me find it, right? So I have this whole ecosystem of hundreds of thousands of documents that have all been indexed, and anytime I fire up a session, um, it will go and check it and say, "Well, we've already done this before," or "Did you think about it like this?" Right? So this is not a passive system. This is a very active system in which we've built this entire harness around the way that I operate, so that you know. Everything I build can be used, and it's not just, a toy that we set aside afterwards, so
There's another element which is fascinating about area is the relationship to time. Very often, and we've all like grew up in a technology where we need to do things faster and such. But if we go on the area website, people will read that it does actually take a lot of time. Time is really what also makes area very effective to then turn certain processes, which could be drug discovery or diagnosis, way more effective. And I found this fascinating because it's almost at odds with what you read most about agents, like, oh, I want an answer right now, or even some use cases you mentioned. I'm going to summarize a lot of papers, but almost in a human way, area has the time to develop and sometimes comes to conclusions ahead of you.
yeah, that and she also is wrong a lot, and she's really good at recognizing when she's wrong, and I think that's more important than going off and getting things right a lot of the time. To give me an idea of where not to look a lot of the time is worth just as much to me. Right? So I think for me, and again, this has just taught me patterns about how I approach building agents. When I was at AstraZeneca, what I'll do when I, go on to Tempest. It's like all of these experiences and patterns continue to build, and this is the whole point that I was trying to make. When I decided to write a book, right? Is that there are people that are trying to make lots of decisions around the most important decisions in companies right now. How are we productionizing AI? And they're sometimes coming at it from discussions or you know reading their way across this technology gap that exists. And for me, it's like I call it the builder leader, right? I feel like you have to put your hands on this stuff and understand, when you're running 3 different autonomous agents, like, just watching how they interact with each other and how agents interact and the different models for how they interact, not like the LLM models, but just, do you want them to be able to talk to each other, or do you want to escalate information up, right? So you learn the nuances of how these models break and, the things they do by experience.
I think it's also a great analogy that Aria and you are creating this corpus of knowledge and then create a lot of value from it. In an industry like life sciences, I mean, few companies have as much knowledge from all the experiments and such as a life sciences company. So it's a great pattern to. There's a lot of things to discover and uncover still in these corpus of knowledges. So now AI will help on that front as well. So let's go from the agents back to you, the human, in the loop. So
Yeah,
you have a marine biology degree, and you
I
taught
do.
yourself how to code. Walk us a little bit. How did you take that journey?
Yeah, I think I came to coding sideways through biology. I've always I want to build towards something, and science was kind of that passion. Code was kind of how I got there, and then I landed with a guy, Craig Venter, that did the first human genome, and I landed with him right when we were just like right when genome sequencing was just taking off, and it was. I've always kind of found myself right at that frontier, at the tip of the spear of things that needed technology and computing and engineering, and then marrying that with like the cool biology. And so I went and I did a startup after that where we were doing sequencing related stuff, and then I spent over a decade at AstraZeneca going from genomics and then eventually leading a lot of the R&D AI work there.
You've had a few moments in your career where you just explained you were very often at the really as the wave was happening, you were slightly ahead of it. But you were there when something clicked and you saw something that was possible before most people did. Can you take us through one of those first moments and what did you do when you saw these you saw this happening?
It's funny, I think everybody probably expects that click moment to be, like, the most brilliant idea, right? And I think for me, mine was maybe the opposite of that. I think it was when I realized that I don't have to always come up with that most brilliant idea and build something from scratch. I can take some of those brilliant ideas from people or somebody else and help them make it real, or take an idea that's been around for years and reshape it into something new. I think that's, so I, for example, like we did this big rerun at AstraZeneca right when I first started there. There was the TCGA consortium spent 5 or 6 years kind of, sequencing all the human genomes and getting the mutation data together. And it moves at a glacial pace because they were trying to do something that nobody's ever done before, right? And then at the end of that 5 or 6 years, they present all of the data that they did. We read it, and then I realized, like, wow, okay, like the times have changed in the past 5 or 6 years, right? Like compute's really cheap. This is like cloud computing. Back in the day, it was just, so, and the algorithms had changed. We had really, really honed in on kind of like real deep sequencing mutation detection that just didn't exist, the year before. So we took the whole data set that they spent years processing, and we reprocessed the entire thing in partnership with one of the companies we were working with in about 22 days with a novel algorithm of our own. And it turns out that we then, unlocked about like 17% like novel variants that map straight back into the portfolio, um, and could inform drug projects above what was already just published and was one of the most exciting things that had come out in the past 5 or 6 years. We took it, and in less than a month, right before Christmas, before everybody disappeared for Christmas, we did this. And like the machinery around it I guess the delay is not necessarily like it's never like the science. It's the machinery around it, right? And I call it like the people, the process, politics, and big organizations, things like that, right? So, um, so to take these stuff and to take these and kind of figure out how to break that down and just move quickly, um, is usually where my aha moments come from.
You shared with us recently you came across a script from Andrej Karpathy that could improve a model overnight just by letting it run experiments while nobody's watching or sleeping. Um, in your own words, what kind of aha moment did that trigger for you? What was the significance of this?
Yeah, I think this came back to like the "I can't believe we haven't thought of this before" type thing. It was like the elegance and the simplicity of it, right? It was just 600 plus, lines of code, and he let it run overnight on the one of the original. He called it Nano Chat, but it was like the original ChatGPT, version 1. And it ran 50 experiments, and it found a better learning rate. So it was actually how they train the models, and there was 0 human input, right? So everybody loves to, like, sensationalize the AI and say, "Okay, like, we're moving towards AGI and stuff like that." But when people talk about, like, this, AGI, that it's models training models at that point, right? And so this had 0 human input. So, but this is where, for me, this concept of the harness just clicked in, right? This was the harness thesis in miniature, right? The model itself is the commodity. Like the readable self-extending loop around that model, I saw that as quickly becoming the asset that most companies would want to invest in, right? That just kind of got me started. And then now, like, this whole concept of loops and auto research and all of this has taken off, right? Like, you've got people at Anthropic that say that even agentic coding is dead at this point. They don't actually sit at Claude Code terminals anymore. They kick off loops that then do the Claude coding for them in the background. So I mean, we've gotten to that recursive kind of exponential explosive growth on that curve now for this stuff.
So now, to rephrase a little bit, so then we end up with a world where we have a small group of people who get it, who have built the harnesses and such, that let the system run and act. maybe not on its own, but actually collaborate with the systems, and others who are more in the traditional style of using, like, asking questions, prompt review, etc. Um, what are the proportions that you see? It feels like very few people are actually embracing the harnesses. What's your perspective on where data science leaders who play an incredibly important role? Where do they stand today?
Having senior, leaders endorsing this and understanding the importance of it and realizing that it's very little of it's actually a technology problem. It's actually the people, the process, the change, going on behind this. But then having the technical leadership within the company to push this and push the frontier within the company is also needed. And I think sometimes that middle is missing, right? Like a lot of companies, you don't necessarily as a leader get super hands on. And I think the gap is widening, because I don't think it's a I think it's a, it's I think most people are sitting on this kind of co-pilot side, right? They'll prompt something, they review it, they'll approve it. Some may be using agentic systems, but they're using agentic systems almost in like a chatbot type way, right? Where they're like they give it something and then they wait for something to come back out. And it's much more of an orchestra. I think if you've moved on towards like the agent and then the harness, right? And I think even a lot of strong data science teams are stuck at the co-pilot, early agentic stage. Um, and I think the problem is you can't read your way across this, right? You can't buy your way across it from like outsourcing it. Like the crossing is personal because somebody's got to do it, and then somebody's got to teach somebody else how to do it, right? That's the way that we've done biology. That's the way that we've done everything else. And I think everybody's just assuming that for some reason this one's different.
The only way is to build, have the scars, and then and work your way through it. And that's where the builder leaders come in, as you state in the book, like fostering, encouraging people, and I guess in every stage of their career to do this. It's also accessible, so that's important too. And then they can seize the speed and the potential of innovation and transformation.
Yeah.
For most of your career, you said you had to choose between mission and frontier technology, cure cancer at a pharma, or go play with the cool tech somewhere else. Now you're saying when things are done right, this choice of is collapsing, and at the same time, you shared with us an anecdote about some company's mantra that gives you goosebumps, where you feel companies getting it when they're sort of walking that new frontier right now. Can you tell us a bit more about this company mantra, or what this new world you see and you see happening, where actually there's a convergence of these two worlds that used to be completely separate?
It used to be really hard for pharma to kind of compete on, hey, come here and you're going to develop cool software. Most big companies like this, they weren't software companies, right? They were biotech, biopharmaceutical companies, and that's what they were. And but you could hire people that were on a mission, right? Those that had tackled some of the cool technology problems and wanted to come and help like cure cancer. Um, I don't think now like you're going to have that luxury as a company to afford people either one or the other. Like you have to have both if you want to hire the right people and retain the right people. The real argument behind this is like we're all going to have to get super uncomfortable figuring out how we can move at such a rapid pace and introduce AI and technology and feel be comfortable with being uncomfortable, but do it in the right way, right? Like you can't hurt patients in a biopharmaceutical, like you just can't do it, or any regulated industry, right? Like working with people's money, working with their medicine. You know, so all of this process has been built to protect those people. But I think a lot of the time, this process at this point is actually blocking helping them because, you could move at a more rapid pace. You know, if AI stops people from shipping things, and that then stops protecting patients and starts protecting the process itself. I wrote a blog, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and it was like make AI eat the keyboard, right? So make it eat the process now. So when I say AI ate the keyboard, it's like it now codes for you. So now help it, use it to help you figure out how you're going to eat the process around this.
You've recently left AstraZeneca. Next horizon for you is a new company, a new book, Build a Leader, the exoskeleton that crosses the gap. And you have agents continuing to run ahead or with you. What are you most genuinely curious about right now?
Oh man, how much time do we have left? Do we have another hour?
Yeah, sure.
I, so I'm gonna keep writing, keep doing that stuff. Keep working with the company in Nepal. We're gonna keep firing on all cylinders with Aria. I'm super excited to join Tempest. The data that they sit on, their attitude towards innovation. I'm just super excited to get going there. And yeah, I think just my own arc has gone from really heavy steering of these things to I'm just trying to stay out of their way, so I'm not slowing them down. Uh, and finding that balance, and I think that's just going to come with continued experience and watching this all unfold. And yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I've set up whole pipelines that I just get mainlined in the morning, all of the news, and like I get so excited about this stuff. So it's just yeah, I'm gonna keep building.
It's almost like being in a boat again, and then you wake up in the morning, see where the boat went, where the current, where the weather is, and then set the line and the trajectory. So
Yeah.
your horizon has always been a little bit ahead of most people's horizon. And what's the question nobody's asking right now?
The big one that I'll go back to is that we need to figure out how AI can eat the process around AI. I think it's almost this Ouroboros thing, right? The snake that consumes itself. I think you can't say that everything in the world is changing around you and then still keep doing things the way you used to do them, right? So I think we fundamentally have to ask ourselves how this changes and how we need to think about the fundamental processes of running these companies differently and doing these things differently. And I think a lot of people are just trying to go out and say, okay, well, like we'll just buy Claude Cowork, right? So these are like point solution band-aids in a way. So I think really trying to kind of reinvent how you run these companies from the bottom up. So one of the things I'm going to get to later this summer is uh, there's running a agentic company. Like, could you run an apartment in a company with agents? Everything from finance to engineering, and I've already started sketching this out. And there's platforms called like Paperclip and other things that help do this. So I think there's all kinds of exciting stuff.
So get uncomfortable, build, get out of the way of AI,
Yeah,
and you will end up in places you may not have expected. And the beauty of your innovation is that you're doing it in the public, under the public eye. You communicate a lot with the help of your agent. Might be the academia background, but you document a lot of things, so there's a lot to learn. So I really encourage everybody to not only read the book but also go to your Substack and your website. Araya has its own website. Thanks so much, Justin, for the
yeah,
perspective. Very enlightening, and
cool.
I'm sure we'll talk soon again. We can come and tell us again about how it is to run a fully agentic company with one human and many agents. But thanks so much for the perspective and the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate the invite to come on. Thanks.
Justin's story is a preview of a shift that's already underway. It's not just the model, it's the harness around it. The loop that runs while you sleep and hands you back something before you even go looking for it. What's had me thinking since we spoke is the level of collaboration Justin has with Aria, and also the breadth of solutions that it's come up with. There's a lesson there for us leaders and us persons that we can apply, I think, in our personal life and in our professional life on how to elevate ourselves with AI. You'll find Justin's book, Builder-Leader, and his Aria blog linked in the show description. This is Data Science Leaders, where we learn from real experiences of those building and governing the intelligence systems shaping our world. A show by AI leaders for AI leaders. This show is brought to you by Domino Data Lab, trusted by the world's most advanced enterprises to operationalize AI responsibly and at scale. I'm Thomas Bean. Thanks for joining us. One quick ask before you go. If you're getting something out of the show, take 10 seconds to rate it in the app you're in right now. It's the single biggest way to help more people find these conversations. Thanks for listening.